Today's episode of Morning Coffee with Cameron is brought to you in part by Free to Use Sounds. Free to Use Sounds offers a massive library of over a terabyte, yes, terabyte of sounds that are royalty and commercial free to use in your music production, game or video work, or sound design projects. By using my promo code VENUSTHEORY at checkout, you can save 80% and get the entire library for under $20. Howdy doody, Buckaroonies, and welcome back to another episode of Grumpy Mustache Man telling Unison Audio to go f*** themselves. Today, we're going to be taking a look at Pianobook. I have been planning this video for a long time, and today I'm finally going to sit down and make it. Pianobook is, at least to my knowledge, one of the largest collections of sample-based instruments available, and the best part, it's all entirely free. Pianobook is a project started by Christian Henson, who you might know as head honcho over at Spitfire, and it is a community-driven project of sample-based instruments, everything from pianos to synths to drums to vocals to strings and a bunch of other stuff in between, all designed by a bunch of really cool and talented creative people, musicians, sound designers, and other people from all walks of life. It is really extraordinary, and it's so cool. As you probably know, your boy here is a huge proponent of free and open source tools that enable creative people to start creating things, and I especially love to see this level of collaboration. I think it's a really unique time to be involved in the music space. Not only do we have so many great free plugins, but we have this new sense of collaboration between developers and sound designers and musicians and visual artists and everybody that coalesces into something truly insane when you really think about it, and Pianobook is one of those special projects that I feel deserves a lot of attention. Because Pianobook is community driven as well, you can contribute yourself, so if you would like to submit an instrument and create your own, I've got some information linked down in the description below that you can check out to find out how to contribute your own stuff to Pianobook for everyone to enjoy. With that, let's pop in and take a look at Pianobook and make something with it. Here is the Pianobook website. Right now it has 800 sample packs made by 381 different samplists. We have the categories up here. So we've got pianos, strings, choirs, winds, found sounds. Then we've got some formats. We have Contact, EXS24, Decent Sampler, and SFZ. Personally, the Decent Sampler stuff is what I go for because I don't have the full version of Contact, but you can download Contact format instruments here as well. We're going to be using Decent Sampler in this video because it's absolutely free. You can get this from decentsamples.com. It's made by none other than David Hilowitz. He's got an excellent channel you should go check out with the little blob thing that's going to pop up here. But we're going to download this. It's available for Mac, Windows, and even Linux, so you can use this on any platform to start creating with. If we pop in here to just the Decent Sampler format projects, there's already an insane number of things, but we've got a lot of cool stuff to choose from here. We've got some Tibetan singing bowls we could take a look at, maybe the stylophone and the synths and broken piano. Let's check out what some of these are. Every samplist also has their own profile, so if you find someone who's making really cool stuff, like maybe Robert Gutschow here, hopefully I didn't butcher your name, sorry Robert, but we can give them a follow to get alerted every time they make something new. So let's check out some of the other instruments. Here we've got Electric Sparkles from none other than Christian Henson. It looks like he's even made a video about this. We've got a couple demo tracks, and what's nice as well is that for the instruments there are reviews that rate it by sound, character, playability, inspiration, and the GUI, so you can get an idea of if something is worth checking out. Everything I've tried so far is pretty cool, but sometimes the quality varies as it is community driven, but for the most part everything is pretty usable. One last one here that I personally really like is Shivering Waves. This is from Fred Poirier. Hopefully I said that right. Sorry, Fred. This is a really cool one, but we can see this has a really nicely done GUI. We have ratings for everything, so we can start downloading a bunch of these and see what we can make. I've already got a bunch of stuff downloaded, so I think we're just gonna work with some of my favorite instruments I found here today. So here I've got a typical Decent Sampler instrument open, and much like a Contact instrument or something, the UI and the controls change based on that specific instrument, but I figured it would be good just to go over a general overview of how things work and where things are before we really dive in and do something with it. Decent Sampler instruments overall are pretty straightforward, and personally that's what I like about it. It's not an instrument that you sit here fiddling with, it's an instrument that's designed to be played and to make some music with, which is always good to see. So in this instrument we have a couple things. We have some windows which can toggle things, we have sliders, in this case they're labeled for volume and the panning of the individual layers, we have attack and release controls, we have a filter control, so we have a tone knob here, or a low pass filter probably, a dynamic range slider, and a reverb slider, and that's really straightforward. Down along the bottom, we have the keyboard. We can go up or down the keyboard range to see where the instrument starts and ends based on how many samples or how stretched out the samples are. I do wish that you could extend the range infinitely. It would be nice because some sample instruments are quite restricted, and it would be nice just to let it stretch out and get weird with it. Over to the left of the keyboard, we have a mod wheel and a pitch wheel, so you can click and move those manually. Then in the top, we have the main menu bar. If we go up to the top here and click Browse, we can browse all of the available decent sampler instruments directly from the library, which I think is pretty cool. Some people really don't like that microtransaction feel, but I think it's neat. It's also good that all the instruments are very clearly labeled as to if they are free or paid. There are some paid instruments, but most of them are pretty affordable. And if you click an instrument, you can not only get it, but also view a description of what it is and a little bit more information about it, which is always good to see, so I know what I'm getting before I download it. Other than that, we have the My Libraries tab. Personally, I've had a bit of trouble with this lately, but I think that's because I've been moving these files to lots of different folders while making this video, so I'm gonna discount that as probably my error, but this is where you can browse all your own libraries that you've designed or imported elsewhere. In the top to the left and right, we can scroll through different presets or go to different instruments if no presets are available for that instrument. We have a master volume, master tune control, and then in the file menu, we can load in files, load recent files, reload the instrument, which is helpful if you're developing your own. We can log out of our account, MIDI learn the available controls to learn, adjust the individual instrument settings, adjust preferences, access the developer tools, rescan the libraries, which is useful if you bring something in and it can't find it, so you can just manually force it to rescan, and go through the sample libraries sorted alphabetically, which can be nice just to browse things that way if you feel so inclined. So that's really all there is to talk about with decent sampler instruments. As mentioned, the UIs and the controls change based on the instruments, and the quality of the UI and the controls and how things are laid out and labeled, you're really at mercy of the developer. Not everyone does the best job of labeling things and setting things out in a clear way, but for the most part, everything I've downloaded so far has been more than usable. Some are just better looking than others. With that, I've gathered up a bunch of my favorite piano book instruments for decent sampler here, and let's pack them together and write us a right proper tune, shall we, bruv? All right, getting things started, I've got this instrument here called Arctic Pad, which is a nice sort of textured synth ambient pad, and I think for a little bit of a challenge, I'm gonna try and make a track using only decent sampler, like just the stock instrument as much as I can, and if I add any effects, it has to be a free or stock effect, and we're gonna do this out of the key of F for free. Layering this up, I've got this sound here called Tunnel Voices, which it notes to play it very low, so by playing this super low, it's got a very spooky sound, and there's almost a kind of like dripping wet noise too if we play really, really low. Which adds this really spooky vibe, and I think that's gonna complement that pad really well. All right, now we're really rocking and rolling, and here I've got Claustrophobic Piano, which is really, really nice. Sort of mellow piano that almost sounds like a felt piano, but it's not too insanely delicate, so I think this should add some nice fullness to everything. This is probably one of my favorite sounds I've found on Pianobook so far. This is Harmonic Flights. Check this sound out. Absolutely stunning sound. So I think this is really gonna add that sense of mystery and texture and whatnot that would really help kind of bring this piece together, I think. So far, so good. This is kind of a quick clip of what I've got so far, and I think this is gonna be the core of everything. And I think that's sounding pretty solid. So the rest of this, I think, is just gonna be about adding some texture and fullness to everything, and also just the overall sonic atmosphere. This is a super cool sound here. This is called Frozen Glock. And even just straight out of decent sampler with the built-in reverb and stuff, this sounds really cool. I like that it's really soft, but it's very in your face. So I think with some added effects, this is really gonna sound nice. Here's the pad sound I had. And I think what I'm gonna do with this is sort of use it as a type of vocal. It almost sounds very vocal-ish. Like if you had a weird ah vocal and ran it through some really crusty tape, I think that's kind of what this feels like. So I'm gonna use this as sort of a lead element, I think. Here I've got one called Misty Flute, which is really great for texture. I think it's got this airy, sort of raspy thing, and I think this really adds some intrigue. And I've got this stuff so far. So I think I'm hearing kind of like a descending, and maybe some really kind of tight clusters with it just to add some tension. But I almost picture this with that airiness, like kind of rising and falling waves. And so far this feels kind of like a beach scene at the end of the world, maybe. So I think I'm gonna use this as kind of like a rising and falling texture to provide some dynamic. So it's not really gonna be a leading thing, it's just gonna provide the pacing. So far, so good. Next up, one of my favorite sounds. This is from none other than David Hilowitz. This is the Slinky violin. He made an excellent video about this. You can check it out with the little bubble, but playing this with the mod wheel, it reminds me a lot of the like frozen strings thing that Spitfire did. So I think this adds a really nice sort of icy texture. So I took that and duplicated it and pitched it an octave down so I can have kind of a big ensemble string sort of effect, but it has that weird slinky reverb to it. So this should be really cool to fill out the mix quite a bit. Not to toot my own boot here, but man, this is sounding just wow. Like, I'm not trying to hype this here, but the fact that that's all free is incredible. That sounds so good so far. I think it just needs a bass, like a subby thing. It feels very like mid-rangey right now. So I'm gonna try and turn one of these other two sounds into like a sub layer, and then maybe just a bit more kind of texture work or something just to fill in some of these gaps in the arrangement. But I mean, damn, that's really cool. This sound I wanted to save towards the end of the arranging process because it's particularly weird, and that's why I love it, but that's also why I didn't want to use it too early, because I feel like this is one of those kind of subtle spices we throw in the mix, not necessarily like a thing we want up front. But this sound is a I don't know, it's like a synth or maybe a string sound run through some modular stuff, but if you hold a note, it has kind of a cool paddy droney thing going on, but the longer you hold it, the more like chaotic and detuned and insane it becomes, and I really like that. So I think we're gonna use this kind of for some subtle stabs and movements here with that like rising and falling crest of the like waves from the flute and strings. Okay, last up here I have Boiling Swarm. I don't know what this is. I think it was made with the sound of boiling water. I just saw the picture and the name and was like, sign me up, brother. So I tuned this down an octave, and I think that's gonna make for a really nice sub bass layer, but it's got a nice texture to it because of like the bubbling water. So I feel like kind of subtly, maybe if we pair it with octaves. I've got a little bit of a bass boost on it with the stock Bitwig EQ here. I think that's gonna sound really good. Okay, like an hour and a half later, I think I'm done. I think I'm happy with this, but I'm just gonna call it. But I had to tweak a couple things with the arrangement and move some notes around and shift some registers of things, but I'm pretty happy with this. I succeeded, though, I will have you know. This is all using only Decent Sampler and stock plugins and a couple other freebies. On one of the layers here, which is Claustrophobic Piano, I added M Charm Verb just for a little bit more room to it. The stock Bitwig reverb I don't really care for, but this is a really nice free one that sounds very natural. I've got a couple other things, but nothing really notable. I was surprised how far I was able to go with just Decent Sampler and the stuff I got from Pianobook. Other than that, on the Frozen Glock here is probably where I did the most work. This was all very much sound designy stuff to make it fit the role I had kind of envisioned for it. So first up, I ran it through more M Charm Verb. I just copied it from the piano just to add some space and make it a bit more big and kind of like almost a synthetic texture rather than the straight up Glock. And then I added one other effect that's very cool. I ran it through the stock Bitwig delay, which was cool and it added a sense of space, but I wanted more. So I ran it through Emergence here, which is a 4 playhead granular delay effect that is amazing. It's such a cool free plugin. You should really go check this one out. So I used only 2 of the 4 playheads, but just by doing that and with that bit of delay and reverb before this, you get this. Which is just such a huge swarming texture that has this nice punch and transient from the Glock sound, but it also has this kind of drifting, woozy vibe that's really nice. So that's pretty much all I did. Everything else was just Decent Sampler and a few EQs here or there. For a very light mastering job, I used the stock Bitwig EQ just to boost a little bit of bass, boost a little bit of kind of the mud range, but just to add some more kind of substance to it with some low mids and a tiny bit of top end. There's quite a bit of air going on here and stereo space, but I felt like it needed just that little bit of lift to really sound full. Then that goes into Kilohertz Limiter, nothing really to talk about here, and the track is done. Let's hear the final result. So that is what I made using only sounds I downloaded from Pianobook, used inside of the free Decent Sampler, and then mixed and made with free and stock plugins in the DAW. And I think that is undeniably pretty damn impressive. Like I mentioned, the fact that this is free is such a cool thing because it's just this new sense of collaboration between creative people. Not only are these instruments recorded and sampled by people, but the plugins that are used to put them together are all created by people, and it's all free, and it's all this big sense of creative people enabling other creative people in different ways. And I think that's really quite a beautiful thing, and that is just super amazing. It really floors me to think that this stuff is available and accessible to everybody. If you want to download this project file for yourself to experiment with, you can become a patron with the link down in the description below. Of course, if you make something cool with other Decent Sampler instruments from Pianobook or the plugins featured in this video, feel free to share it with me on social media or the Discord. I always really love to hear what all of you are out there and what you're up to. So with that, I think we're done here. A huge thank you to David Hillowitz, the creator of Decent Sampler. A huge thank you to Christian Henson and the Pianobook community for making this whole project possible. This is just insanely impressive, and it's such a cool thing. And of course, it would be awesome if you get involved yourself. Not only can you contribute to Pianobook, you can make your own Decent Sampler instruments and put them up there as well, and give other people other cool stuff to create with. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. And as always, I hope this inspires you to get out there and make something awesome.